All right. Hello, everybody. I am back live today. This is, I don't know if this is number 4 or 5 now, but my goal in the month of August is to be live on Facebook and YouTube every weekday. And so this is a continuation of that attempt to do that. And I got to tell you, this one is very nerve wracking for me today because I am doing this one without a guest. So I am alone up here. I got to carry the conversation on my own. Um, I'm glad that others will be joining me so that I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself. But yeah, I'm nervous. I am not a person who sweats, but I swear I in the month of August I have perspired more in in the month than I have in the rest of my life combined. So this has been a very interesting uh, process so far, and I'm excited to be sharing with you today. Today's subject matter is going to be basically a Q&A session. If anybody is watching live, please post your questions that you have about the real estate market, or if you're a realtor, about our industry as real estate agents. And if you're watching the replay, please also still comment, because I'll make sure that I get back to you with answers to your questions, and definitely want to let everybody have an opportunity to pose their questions out there. I'll just mention right now before we jump into some of the questions that, so I have some questions that people have given to me. At the end of every one of my continuing education courses, I'll ask the class to fill out a little survey where they can put in there any questions that they might have, kind of like an ask me anything kind of form. And I have a few questions from that people have asked me. And before we go into those questions, I just want to mention that tomorrow I will be live again. And tomorrow's guest is actually going to be a home inspector. And you might think that that's just pretty rudimentary, or, kind of an ordinary conversation, but there's actually some things that I know that he and I don't agree on with respect to inspections. And so I think that'll be interesting. We'll lay it all out there. It'll be all out there for everybody to see. And I intend to ask him some pretty direct questions about home inspections from his perspective as a home inspector. So that one should be also really interesting. I'll also mention that I have just these few questions prepared, and this live stream today might be the shortest one I ever do, because when I'm done talking about these questions and answers, I'm off, and I can go back to not perspiring. But I've set these up in an order where each question sort of builds on the next question, with the main topic being, how do we create an environment of success for realtors as they represent buyers and sellers in their transactions? And I've saved the last question, is definitely a very juicy, sort of controversial. There's definitely a lot of controversy right now in our industry around that topic. And so we'll lead up to it. Some of the background and history that will be important for that question will come out earlier in the other questions, and it will set the stage nicely for that really juicy, controversial, almost nuclear kind of a question about our industry and about how we represent buyers and sellers. So stay tuned for that one. I'm going to jump right in, I think, to the first question. And the first question is, it is a touch long of a question, but the person who asked it was so thoughtful in his approach to the question, and he articulated it so well, that I want to read what he wrote and then get to the heart of the question. But this one we're going to call is the ready, shoot, aim question. And this one was submitted by Daniel. He's a Keller Williams agent. And really appreciate him being in one of my CE classes. And I really appreciate him posing this question. So I think he's actually pretty experienced in the business, but has been on the commercial side and has recently switched over to the residential side. And so feels like, again, like almost like a rookie, like a fish out of water. And this is what he wrote. The learning curve to become an expert in real estate is steep, which I would agree on that. I don't feel like enough emphasis is placed on real estate professionals learning, but instead the industry is modeled and patterned after a ready, shoot, aim philosophy. My biggest challenge has been warding off the advice to quote, just grab a lead and start earning. And then he goes on to say that he feels like this approach is very much a like testing it out on a client's approach that makes him feel really uncomfortable. Now, there's a reason that I chose this question to start with, and that is because I have heard other agents pose similar comments and questions to this. And I can actually argue both sides of what he's bringing up. And so I thought it would be an interesting thing for us to talk about today, because there's no question that the best way for a realtor to learn the business is by doing it. You can attend classes, watch videos, you can listen, read, you can do all of those things, but I've just noticed in the over the years of having coached and mentored hundreds of agents that those agents learn the best. It happens for them the fastest. They get up to speed the fastest by doing the real estate transaction, right? So I think, Daniel, that's probably why you get that advice of just grab a lead and start earning, because the people who are giving you that advice, they know that you're going to learn the fastest by actually doing this stuff. Now, I definitely agree with you that you don't want to be practicing on clients. That probably isn't the best way to do it. So I guess what I would say is my advice would be learn by doing a transaction, but under the tutelage of a mentor or a coach or somebody that can show you those ropes. And I actually wish that our industry would change the way we do it a little bit, because the bar to entry is pretty low. I sometimes joke that sometimes people walk into our industry and they've stepped over the bar and they don't even know they have. That's how low it is. But if we had some sort of like a mentorship or apprenticeship type arrangement in our business, like they do in a lot of other industries, I actually think that would be really helpful. So obviously that would change the industry entirely. And I think that there'd be some growing pains associated with that. But I don't think that that would necessarily be the worst thing that we could do as a business, just my opinion. Now, I will say, when I coach and mentor a new agent, or any agent that's asking for my help, I will not do that with them. I will not be involved in that transaction with them unless they are working with a very competent transaction coordinator. The best advice I think I give to new agents is get that transaction going as quickly as you can. Have a mentor to help you know from a realtor perspective how to do that. And for sure, work together with a transaction coordinator, because my transaction coordinator, she's a killer. She's been in the business for 9 years. I trained her from the ground up. She knows this business better than most real estate agents know the business. And she doesn't just do the transaction and everybody else is in the dark. As she's getting that transaction through the escrow process, she's copying the agent. And so the agent has the benefit of watching somebody who really knows what she's doing kind of manage that process through the entire escrow process. Now, I do think that having some sort of a mentor is still important, because some of those transaction coordinators are not licensed. And there are certain realtor responsibilities that you have during the transaction that you need to know how to do, and need to do that under the guidance of an experienced real estate agent who is licensed, properly licensed. But the use of a transaction coordinator, man, it is so worth the money that you pay for it. I think, one of the best ways to learn. You get to watch the transaction happen, and by somebody who really knows what she's doing. Okay, so that's question number one. And I'm going to go to the next question. This one was submitted by somebody who I know who it is, but she asked to remain anonymous. She didn't want her name shared, but I thought it was still a really good question. And her question was, is an online presence the most important marketing strategy? Now, this one is interesting for me because I would not claim to be the strongest marketing person out there. I feel like I do a good job of it. Obviously, I've done a decent job of it because I've had a very good real estate career. It's been thriving and flourishing. But there are definitely people out there who understand advertising and marketing better than I do. What I will say about that is this: the buyers and sellers that you're hoping to work with, they definitely have an online presence. So if you don't have any type of an online presence, there's a huge gaping hole in your overall marketing strategy. But I do think that there are a lot of agents who are very successful without what you would consider to be like typical social media or video content type marketing that are capable, they're able to stay top of mind to all of those clients that are out there, and they're able to actually market to people that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise be in touch with because of their presence out there online. So is it the most important? I don't know if it's the most important. I think what I would say is the most important is you do have a sphere of influence. I hear sometimes agents say, well, I don't have a sphere of influence. I don't know anybody. I'm new to the city, whatever that is. You still have a sphere of influence, and you want to make sure that those people know you're in the business. I have heard agents tell me before that they'll be at a social gathering and somebody will mention that they just listed their house. And then they'll look over at the realtor and go, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that you're in the business. And so the first thing I did when I got my license was I sent out a few communications. They were very simple, nothing fancy, no big production, just a few communications by email and text and some other methods. And text wasn't really that big of a thing back then. It was mostly email. And I just made sure that at least the first few months that I was in the business, I explained to people that I was in the business, why I had done what I had done, and how I could help them. And interestingly, some of my first clients were referred to me by some of the people that I know that don't live in Las Vegas. They knew somebody that was moving to Las Vegas, and they referred those people over to me. And so that's when I say that you do have a sphere of influence and you should be tapping into that. I definitely think that one's really important. There's other things you can do that are not really online presence, things like business networking groups and things like that, that I think can have a really good impact. And then these title companies out there, they do have really good farming systems. And they have not just the system, like the technology systems, but they have good methodologies that they can coach you on. And I've seen agents be very successful with some of these different farming techniques. So definitely, I would look into being online. Yes, for sure. I think you should do that, but that should be part of a more well-rounded overall marketing strategy. Okay, before we go to question number 3, I just want to mention that I do teach CE for any Las Vegas realtors that are watching this. This right here is the Eventbrite page where I teach CE, and I think I can, yeah, here we go. So this right here is that link, Unmundane CE. We call it the Unmundane Education Series. That link, unmundanece.eventbrite.com, takes you to this page that you're seeing right now. And then on that page, you'll see these are the classes, the different classes that we offer. And right now, the classes that we offer are out there, all the ones through the end of the year. So if you are a real estate agent in Las Vegas or in Nevada, anywhere, and you want to have what I think is the highest quality CE you can get, I will tell you that we're very careful about what we will present there. I can promise you that will be an experience unlike any experience you've had in CE. And there's a reason that we didn't call it the Fun Education Series, because I'm a realtor. I have to take CE, and I know that fun and CE don't always go together. But at least we can be in the unmundane column. So that's our goal. And I will say we do actually even sometimes have a little bit of fun. Okay, let's go to question number 3. What will happen to our industry in the long run as a result of last year's NAR settlement? So National Association of Realtors had a class action lawsuit. And in March of last year, March 15th of last year, it was announced that it had been settled for a sum of $418 million. And there were certain policy changes that were required to be implemented as a result of that. And those changes became effective on August 17th of 2024. So we are coming up on the 1-year birthday of the way we're doing business right now because of that. And there was a few things that were the result of that of that lawsuit. But I'll just mention a couple of them. The first one, and probably the most important one as far as the plaintiffs were concerned, was that there was a required decoupling of the listing agent's commission and the buyer's agent's commission. So in the past, the way it worked was the listing agent would negotiate a total commission with the seller, and then the listing agent would offer a co-op, a cooperative commission out there to the buyer's agent for bringing the buyer to the table. And it worked that way for many, many years. But that co-op is like a four-letter word now in our industry. It's pretty much gone. And so this question I get a lot. What do you think in the long run is going to be the result of this settlement? The second thing I'll mention that was probably one of the other big changes is buyers now must have a buyer agency agreement in place with a buyer's agent. So the buyer's agent and the buyer have to have this agreement in place before the buyer's agent tours properties with the buyer. Now, we call this document the BBRA, Buyer Broker Representation Agreement. We used to call it the BBA. Some people still call it the BBA. I differentiate it between BBA. That old one was very different than the new one. The new one I like to call the BBRA because it's different very much from the BBA of times past. And when the settlement first happened in August of last year, and I have receipts for what I'm about to say because you can go on my YouTube channel and you can see the videos that I made. I did a fact versus fiction video series about this subject and what I thought was going to happen. And I also just did a sit down and just sort of gave my thoughts when it first occurred, kind of a video. And I said then that I don't think this is going to really change much how the business happens. And there are definitely some changes, but the main facets of how a real estate transaction happens and who pays the commissions and what those commissions are, they really have not changed very much. The reason that I thought that they wouldn't change very much is because I felt like the market had already sort of figured out the equilibrium of the value of the agents involved in the transaction, and that those were market forces that were bigger than anything else and could not really be impacted unless there was something that directly made those things change. And so because the settlement had only indirect impacts, my prediction was that it wasn't going to change very much, and it really hasn't changed much. The timing of when we talk about commissions with clients has changed a little bit in the transaction, and we certainly don't have the co-op anymore because that as I mentioned in the beginning is a thing of the past. But I love these changes, and there are so many great things about having a BBRA in place, an agency agreement with your buyer in place, that I just think is good for our business. But the thing that I like the most about it is that before, as a buyer's agent, before these changes, somebody else was negotiating my commission. Somebody else was negotiating what my client was going to be paying me for what I was going to be doing for them. And this way now forces agents to have the conversation with buyers up front. And that spooks a lot of agents. But I like this way better. I would definitely prefer to be the one negotiating my own compensation with my client. I feel like that's better than having somebody else be doing that for me. And it gives the client the opportunity to recognize or not the value that you bring and decide for themselves if they feel like the value you're bringing has that it should have the price tag on it that you're suggesting. And that lets the client negotiate those things with you, lets you pitch your value to those clients. And it just, I think that's how business in America should work. So I think the way we're seeing it operate right now is how it will be for the long run. Obviously if some other settlement or lawsuit or something happens that changes the policies, that could change. But for the most part, that's what I see so far. Okay, let's see. That was question number 3. I want to mention before I go to question number 4, we have our realtor group is called the Synergy Community. Every year we do a massive day of service, and we do that to benefit a veteran. And this year it's on October 6th. It's usually on October 6th, and this year it is. And these are big. In times past, this has been like a $50,000 to $60,000 value we've given to these veterans that we've improved their home. Usually what we're doing is that we're helping them with a renovation on their home. This year is really special because the recipient, Bob, is a veteran. He's a disabled veteran, but he also is the founder of a nonprofit that benefits and supports and helps other veterans. And so he has at his home a place where veterans can meet and support one another. And when we saw that meeting location, we knew immediately, okay, we can definitely help him improve this. So this year, when we help Bob, we're helping not just Bob, we're helping all these other veterans. So this is something that is a great thing within our Las Vegas community. It doesn't matter if you are a realtor or not, doesn't matter if you're a realtor in a different brokerage. Please come out and support us and help us support Bob the veteran, who's going to be the beneficiary of this year's project. And I think I can share my screen again here. Yep. So there's an Eventbrite link in the description of this video that will take you to this page, and that will allow you to register there. You can help us you can come and volunteer on the day of and help us by, providing some of your labor. And then there's also a donation link right here that's in the description of the video. And if you would please donate something to this, we would greatly appreciate it. We are trying to raise, we need about $25,000 of materials. We've raised about $5,000 so far. So even if you're going to be there, would you please consider also making some kind of a donation for us? That would be very much appreciated. Okay, let's go to question number 4. This is one I get a lot, and especially when the market is fluctuating. How do you deal with indecisive clients? So right now the market is in flux, and we do go through periods where even if it's like a buyer's market or a seller's market, it's like that for a long time. And the market, the clients, the agents kind of all adjust to that. But when those things change, it causes some people to sort of struggle a little bit with what they're thinking. And when things are in change, clients tend to clam up. And so you will see that you will sometimes have indecisive clients in those kinds of markets. So I think the way to answer this one is we have to ask ourselves as realtors, what is making somebody indecisive? Why would somebody even be indecisive? And the second thing I'll bring up, and we'll come back to the why somebody would be indecisive, is what is the job of a realtor? So I've asked this question to, I say all the time, if I ask that question to 100 agents, I'll get 105 answers. And it's true. I mean, as an industry, I think we should answer this for ourselves a little better than we sometimes do. But in my opinion, the job of a realtor is to represent the interests of the client to the best of our ability, even above our own interests. And so what we find here is that those two things go hand in hand with each other, because what you should be doing is you should be finding out what are the interests of your client. And by interests, we could say, what are the objectives that they're trying to accomplish? And when you know what those objectives are, then you can help the client see the pathway for success in what they're trying to accomplish. This is why they're indecisive. So I have a training that I do, and I call it the DIRT methodology of getting hired. It's an acronym. And in there, I describe how people will hire you if they feel like you are going to be the one that can get them from point A to point B. Now, this is what's really interesting about that, is that they know point A. They know what their circumstances are today. They don't know what the pathway is, and they oftentimes don't really know what point B looks like. They have this idea of what they want, but they don't. There's some fuzziness in their minds about what that looks like. And so if they're indecisive, it's because they can't see that pathway. They feel like they don't have all the facts that they need to make the decision. And so your job is to figure out from them, by talking with them and asking them questions, what is point A? Where are they at? What is it exactly that they want to accomplish? And so you need to be able to ask them those kinds of questions. And one of the things I do with a lot of realtors is I share with them, and I'll share with you now, I think it's really important that we as realtors differentiate how we differentiate between a lead and a client. So if you ask yourself for a second, what is the difference between a lead and a client? Again, there's lots of different answers there. There's kind of a technical answer and more of a practical or relationship kind of an answer. For me, this is how I've chosen to define it for me. The first one is that I know what makes them tick. I know how they think. I know how they operate. I know what their hot buttons are. I know what's important to them. I know what makes them tick. So I abbreviate that with tick. And number two is that they have confidence in my competence as a realtor. So I abbreviate that one CNC. So number one is tick. Number two is CNC. If you've ever had a CE class from me before, you've heard this because I share this in all those classes. So the good news is that we never know 100% what makes somebody tick. And there's never a case where somebody has carte blanche 100% all the time confidence in your competence. So there's a huge opportunity for you there throughout the transaction to be sharing things with your client, talking with your client, learning things about your client that are going to really help you. And I'm telling you, once you know their objectives and once you can show them the pathway, that point A to point B, the indecisiveness starts to go away. And if it is the strategy that's best for them is to wait, then great. You have a game plan, you help them through that game plan, and that's what's going to make you and them the most successful. Okay, let's see. I want to go on to question number 5. Is there anything else let me mention also that I am starting this new thing in the month of September. September 17th will be our first meeting of the Unbook Club. And I'll tell you in a minute why I'm calling it the Unbook Club. I'm doing that together with Shelly Johnson. She's the one holding the hat there in the bottom corner. And Shelly is an absolute animal in this business. She runs a mega team together with her partner, Craig, in North Carolina. She's a huge influence in our industry. And I'm very excited to be doing this together with her. Let me get rid of that question there. Sorry. So here's the reason we call it the Unbook Club. I know that realtors are not going to actually read the book. So if we did a book club, I think nobody would actually read it. So we've decided that we'll do the reading, we'll do the work, we'll do the thinking, we'll come up with all the topics and we'll present them. This will be a Zoom call on September 17th. All you do is just show up and listen. Now, I will say that the book, Buy Back Your Time, is a really, really good book. I recommend that you actually do read it so you can contribute more to that conversation. But either way, come join us on that September 17th date because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think this book, the concepts in it really do help you appreciate your own skill set and tell you how to it's not really time management, but just how to value your time the right way and spend your time on those things that are going to help you be the most successful possible. Okay, here it is. This is the last question. And this is question number 5. It's kind of like a two-parter. And these other things have sort of led up to where we are today in our business. And you'll see here in a minute why there's a little bit of controversy around it. So the question is, why did Compass Realty announce that they will not put their listings on the MLS? That was the question that I got. And that was anonymous and probably for good reason that somebody did not want to admit that they were sort of kicking the hornet's nest there. And the second part of that question, and I'll show you here in a minute why these are related, is this question that I received also from an anonymous source. Why are we seeing a lot of associations come under attack? And what will happen to associations in the long run? Okay, so back to the first part of it. Why did Compass Realty announce that they will not put their listings on the MLS? Compass Realty actually did not say that. They did not say that they're not going to put their listings on the MLS. What happened was on July 1st, so this is fairly recent, they came out against NAR's CCP. So they came out against the clear cooperation policy of the National Association of Realtors. And that policy basically says that you must put your listing on the MLS within 1 day of any public marketing of that. And so Compass Realty, we don't know exactly why they're taking the approach they're taking, but my guess would be that they feel like there's too much power in having in the MLS. Like the MLS wields too much power over the business, and Compass feels like their listings belong to them. And so they should be able to display them however they want and not be dictated by the MLS. Now, I will say that most industry leaders are very much opposed to this. They feel like the MLS and that policy truly is a clear cooperation policy, that it drives openness and transparency for clients, and that the general public should be allowed to see as easily and freely as they can everything that is listed on the MLS. Now, interestingly, Zillow has a ban on non-MLS listings, which means Zillow won't display those listings that are non-MLS listings on their platform. And so Compass Realty has sued Zillow. That lawsuit is ongoing. And there's a battle kind of raging about where that data will be held and who will ultimately control that data. Now, why does that have anything to do with this second part of the question, which is why are we seeing a lot of associations come under attack? And what will happen to associations in the long run? Now, this actually could be just as controversial, if not more controversial, than the first part of the question. There are a lot of realtors out there who are dissatisfied with their membership in their associations. And there are some realtors out there that are suing their association and their local MLS in an attempt to decouple the association from the MLS. Now, what I've always said about associations is that the two main values that they bring is the forms, so the documents we use, the templates that we use to transact the transactions, forms, and the MLS. Now, what I find really interesting is that some associations have been selling their MLS. It's an asset of that association. It's just a database, and it can be sold. And so sometimes these associations have sold their MLS to an investor group of some kind. And then the realtors are, I'm going to use the word forced, to pay that investor for the right to list the properties on the MLS. And that seems like a very strange thing to me for any association to want to do, because there's value in that information. And remember how I mentioned that forms and the MLS are the two big value drivers for an association. If an association sells off their MLS, then a lot of their value is gone in the minds of the agents. And so it leaves them with only those forms, and those forms can be replicated other places. Brokerages could create their own forms. A lawyer could create these forms for them. And so I think that to the extent that associations continue to provide value in that way, then they will exist. And to the extent that they don't, they don't. And there are a lot of associations around the world, around the country, that are pretty bloated, have a lot of power and influence that a lot of the realtors are not satisfied with. And so I can see there being these continued attacks and continued pressure on these associations. And I will tell you that for sure, from my perspective, if our association in Las Vegas makes those mistakes that I was mentioning before, I can certainly tell you honestly that I, as an agent, would be asking myself, what is the value of me being a part of that association? And do I even want to be a part of that association anymore? So I know that can be controversial. There's a lot of people that are very loyal to the association, and I understand why. But again, I think it just has to continue to provide that value. Okay, so I hope you guys have found this information helpful today. There is a QR code in the corner of the screen, and if you scan that QR code, it will take you directly to my calendar. I invite anybody who would like to schedule time with me to click on the QR code. I genuinely want to help realtors have the best environment for success. I have coached and mentored hundreds of agents, and I am willing to discuss with anybody, agent, buyer, seller, that has any questions about real estate, and not just realtors in Las Vegas. This can be any realtor literally across the world. If you're seeing this and you'd like to schedule time with me, please do that. My mission for the last several years has been to take some of the weirdnesses and archaic nature of our business and try to bring us into the modern era. And I believe that we as realtors need to have an environment of collaboration with each other. And so that's why we formed what we call the Synergy Community. It's built on top of a brokerage model that I feel like is the future of our business. And the Synergy Community is meant to give agents the support and training and coaching and everything else that they need to be as successful as possible. And we do a lot of fun social events and things like that so that we can be with each other, support each other, and help each other out in transactions. And because of the business model that we've created is quite different than the traditional business model. There's financial incentives for us all to be helping each other, collaborating together. And so I would love the opportunity, even if you don't have a question about the business, I'd love the opportunity to share with you, if you're a realtor, about what that is, why we created it, and what the values are, so that you can take a look at that and see if that's something that would be interesting to you. All right. That is all that I can do. That is all that I can cover today. I will remind you that tomorrow, the discussion with the home inspector, it's going to be juicy as well. I'm definitely not going to just answer. I'm not going to ask these little softball questions. I'm going to, on a couple of things, I'm going to really challenge him, go right after him. And I have the rest of this month, a lot of really good guests lined up. So please be on the lookout for all of the announcements I'll be making about what the topics are going to be each day in the month of August. And again, please, for me, it's right here. I don't know if it's over here on what you're seeing, but scan that QR code and make an appointment with me, and let's have a conversation about real estate. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate all those who tuned in live. Hopefully everybody who watches it on replay will also be interested. If you have any questions, even on replay, put them in the comments and I will reach out to you to answer those questions directly. So that's it for now, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks again for joining me.